Welcome everyone to the Preschool Neuroscience Summit. Today we're very lucky to have Dr. Arthur Costa and Dr. Bena Kallick with us. They are from Habits of Mind Institute and they're very well known in this field. I've been following them for many years. They have a book, Nurturing Habits of Mind in Early Childhood. And Bena Kallick is a speaker, an author, an educational consultant, and she's written different books besides the one we just mentioned. She's also co-authored Students at the Center, Personalized Learning with Habits of the Mind with Alison Zumda, and is the co-founder of the Institute for Habits of Mind. And then Arthur Costa is the past president of ASCD, author and editor of numerous books and articles on coaching, teaching for thinking, and habits of mind, including cognitive coaching, the school as the home for the mind, developing minds, a resource book for teaching thinking, and the book that we just mentioned with Bena. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you on the summit.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you.
So I just wanted to let everyone know we will put the website up, and there's a link to a resource about what are habits of mind that you can download later on if you're interested, and we'll put a link to the book as well if you wanted to read more. But let's start off with the most obvious question. What are habits of mind?
Well, the habits of mind are dispositions that guide us when we're confronted with problems or conflicting situations or ambiguous situations that we don't know what to do. You know, in schools, for years, we have been taught that we're supposed to teach children what to know. And that's true. We do want kids to know a lot. But we also want them to know how to behave when they don't know. And that's where the habits of mind come in. So when people, intelligent people particularly, are confronted with problems and dilemmas and enigmas and situations that are complex and confusing, the habits of mind is what serves them. And so the habits of mind include such dispositions as persisting, sticking to a task over time, as managing impulsivity, not jumping to conclusions, but rather gathering a lot of information first, knowing how to ask questions, knowing how to pose questions and find problems to solve. It means being able to think creatively, to innovate, to be able to find wonderment and look at mystery, for example. It means drawing on knowledge that you have and applying it to situations. And so those are just some of the habits of mind. We have been working with the habits of mind for well over 35 years. And over that time, we've added to them. We started off with about 7, and then we went to 12, and then 14, and now 16, and there could be more. We're not saying that's all, but the 16 seem to be prime. And what they are then are essential thought processes or dispositions that you use when confronted with problems, the answers to which are not immediately known.
Wow, so really important things for us to know ourselves and to develop in the children that we are working with. So in what ways do these habits of mind support the social and emotional learning for particularly young children?
Well, you know, I mean, listening to what Art just said, it would certainly make sense in the fact that we're attending with the habits of mind, although we talk about the idea of the kinds of problems kids are asked to solve, the kind of work they're asked to do academically. We're also talking about the kind of work they need to do to be able to communicate with others, for example. So what is it like when you're being asked as a young child to sit and behave and work in a group. And we ask that of kids when they're very young. For preschool, we just create the environment in which socializing is just there for the students. So we have them socializing, for example, around the sandbox. And so the question is, when they're socializing, how do they manage their impulsivity so that they allow each other to take turns, for one example? So the teachers are often helping them to just think about this. Now, what would you do first? What would you do second? How can you let someone take the turn and another take the turn? And that would be thinking about your thinking, or helping them to think metacognitively. So a lot of what we see is that when students are, or young children are trying to interact with one another, are trying to express themselves, are trying to manage their emotional and also express their emotional delight with things. For example, in a lot of the work with social and emotional learning, we know that they need a language for it. They need to be able to say something more than just, wow, that's terrific. But they need to say, this makes me feel excited. I feel like this is something I'd like to try. And so we get that kind of language, and we have it also included as a part of the language of the habits. So when you say, oh, I really feel excited, then that feeling often gets associated with piquing their curiosity, creating, imagining, and innovating, which is one of the habits. If we say, well, I'm really not sure that I want to take a chance. I'm not sure I want to do this. We say, well, taking a responsible risk. It may be that this is a time when that feeling could also be associated with you're trying a new habit. Maybe just think to yourself, even though I'm a little bit afraid, maybe I can try, so I can take a responsible risk. So we try to help them see in the early childhood classroom the connections between their social life, their emotional life, and their cognitive development academically. And a lot of people like to say, well, these are really what they call the soft skills. Like, these are not cognitive, but there's nothing more cognitive than what we're talking about. And to put in silos that the social and emotional are not cognitive and that the academic work is cognitive is just a misunderstanding of what cognition is all about.
Right, yeah, very interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
I think another dimension is building self-awareness in the young child. And that's basic to social emotional learning, is being aware of your feelings, labeling them, and knowing how to control them and to manage them. And so, and that starts off very early in the child. So when we talk to children about their emotions or their thoughts or their feelings, it creates an awareness. It puts labels on it. So you're feeling really angry today. So you're very confused. So you're upset. So you'd like to play with the toy, but you know that you can't. All those are awareness building activities. And one of the habits of mind is indeed metacognition. And so while metacognition may be in the kid's future to be used with greater consciousness, it's also important to start early on so that kids become aware of their feelings, that they begin talking to themselves about their feelings, they take charge of their feelings, and that they are able to manage their emotions then. And so the self-awareness is the first step of any social emotional learning.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting that first of all, the perceptions, like you mentioned about these being kind of soft skills when they're so important, I think, to everyone, but especially for young children to develop. So what kind of tips or suggestions would you give to teachers about or parents about helping children to learn these kind of habits in a classroom? And also, are they are some children, you know, more prone to be able to, like, is it in their personality, or is this something that everybody learns?
Well, there are some things obviously that are in your personality, your inclinations. So you may have an inclination toward any of these habits. Like it may be that just from your inclination from early on, that you find humor in things and you laugh a lot. So that's an inclination. But it doesn't mean that if you don't have that inclination, you can't learn it.
Right.
And I think that's the key, is the distinction between an inclination and intentional learning. And so what we do is we try to help people understand in the classroom and at home that you have to be rather intentional about this. It's really the building and development of the executive function, as you know, I'm sure. And it's really about how you begin to pay attention to, just as Art said, that awareness of it. So I would say that for me, when I start working with teachers, one big tip that I start with is don't go for all 16 all at once. It's too much. So, you know, break it down and to try to find one or two that just make a lot of sense in your classroom. And to not, one thing that I see a lot of that I would say as a tip I would not suggest is don't just start with the behavioral ones. A lot of times people want to start with managing impulsivity, which is fine, especially early childhood, it's important. And I worked with a kindergarten teacher where she had a whole kinesthetic thing around managing impulsivity. So she would say, I went into the room, she said, well, Bena, you're just going to love this. And then she'd say, class, this is Dr. Kallick, and she was the co-author of the book, Habits of Mind. They all go, ooh. Then she said, now tell me, when I ask you to be managing your impulsivity, what am I asking you to do? And every kid in that classroom went, stop, think before you act.
Wow.
So she had a lovely little routine for them that got them to just, and you could see that they had learned. And it was like nonverbal cues that she could have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that, that
So,
story.
and I think that it's
I
all
think
those, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think all of those kinds of strategies for helping the students realize that this is something that you can learn. So we are very much, and I'm sure that you'll hear this in anything that either one of us say, we're very can-do people. Why keep talking about what you're not doing? We rather say, talk about what you can do and strengthen it. And so any of the habits, you can be a can-do person, but you have to begin to learn and be aware of and have some strategies for how to build it.
I think another very big influence on the children's performance of the habits of mind depends upon what they bring from home. You know, parents, as you well know, are the first teacher. And so the vocabulary, the values, the beliefs, the perspectives, the behaviors that children bring to school are learned long before they ever come to school. And so much of it is dependent upon what the parents have done. And we know very well that, that the modeling of the parents is reflected in their children. Whatever the parents do, the kids are picking that up. Maybe it's not taught directly, but the kids are always watching. They are gathering data. This is true of all intelligent animals, is that they watch the leader of the pack, they watch the parents, and they imitate. And so if the parents are impulsive, it's most likely that the kids are going to be impulsive. If the parents are thoughtful and they ask a lot of questions, the kids are going to come to school asking lots of questions. And so it's very important that the schools work in harmony and partnership with parents, because the parents not only need to model these habits of mind at home, but they also recognize them in their children and reinforce them when they see their children performing them. Wow, you really listened to your sister with understanding and empathy. You really persisted on that task. You really are fascinated or wondering about the opening of that bud. And so the parents become partners in this process, and they have influenced their kids long before the kids ever start school.
Yeah, I think that's just highlights how important it is for schools and to work together with parents. And yeah, it's really interesting. I think how much more research and things are also coming out about that relationship where children model not only their parent but also teachers, and how emotions
Right. Yes.
spreads in the classroom, or these habits of minds, I guess, would
Exactly.
would also come into that. So
I wanted to just add
yeah,
one more small piece about that, but given the COVID-19
yeah,
situation, parents are even more with early childhood very much in the lives with their kids.
yeah.
So I hear it over and over again how appreciative they are and how much they realize what teachers really do. It's kind of, if you ever wanted to have a teacher appreciation week, leave the kids at home for a week. But it's really amazing how they begin to realize what's going on and the significance of the habits of mind. And I think that that's been a wonderful way for schools to partner and communicate with parents, because the parents are right there with the kids and they can hear the language and they can see what some of the behaviors are. So if people wanted to download the article that we have, there's also another article that is on the website as well that's written for parents with habits of mind. So if people were looking for that, I would recommend that they download that. These are all free downloads, and we give permission for you to send them home, to use them, to reproduce them in any way that you think is valuable, because we think that it's such an important piece of caregivers, parents, early childhood people.
Wow, that's wonderful. I'm sure lots of the teachers listening will take you up on that offer. It's always great to be able to spread that information. I know people are really looking for what can we send home, particularly with preschool, where people don't want to be on Zoom all day with
Yes.
preschoolers, but what can parents and caregivers at home do to work with the child? So that's really wonderful. I'm sure a lot of people will download that.
We often get feedback from parents about their child's use and understanding of the habits of mind. Recently, one parent told us that she was driving and her child, I think it was a kindergartner, was in the back seat. And as she was driving along, another driver of the car next to her swerved in front of her. And this upset the mother, and evidently used a little bit of a profanity towards the other driver, a little road rage. And from the back seat comes a voice that says, "Ma, manage your impulsivity." So the kids are learning and teaching the parents how to use the habits of mind as well.
Yeah, it's so amazing and wonderful how kids do just,
Yes.
they learn something, they put it into practice, and often they're the teachers for us as adults afterwards. So that's a great example. So can you tell us, you've been working over 30 years in research in this field. What are kind of the main points or the most powerful things that you could share about the habits of mind?
Well, one thing is the importance of the habits of mind today as the kids face their future. We keep talking about 21st century skills, and we have to realize that we're a quarter of the way through the 21st century already. And we also have to realize that the kids about whom we're talking are going to be living for the next, could well be 100 years. So we're talking about not only the 21st century, but also the 22nd century. And so when we begin asking ourselves, what are the skills and the dispositions that are needed for a very uncertain and complex future, what are those kinds of skills? And we find that these habits of mind seem to be what the authors and what the futurists are telling us are needed about facing the uncertainties of the 21st and 22nd century. Being able to be flexible as a thinker, being able to collect a lot of information before making a decision, being able to work cooperatively with other people, being able to communicate ideas well. And those are all the habits of mind. And so these are nothing very foreign, but they're really what are the necessary skills that kids are going to need as they face their future for well into the 21st and 22nd centuries.
I think what's been especially gratifying to us in terms of lessons learned is that although we have to keep kind of understanding the context in which we live. So certainly when we started, it was in the 60s, 1960s, and we were thinking about these questions. And as we moved in through the time from the 60s, 70s, 80s, we started realizing how much importance there is. Everybody was paying a lot of attention to thinking at the time. And we were trying to develop our ideas around what does it really mean to think. And we came up with this whole conception at that time of what we call becoming a thoughtful person. And so we said thoughtful, meaning full of thought, and also thoughtful, meaning caring and sensitive. And so we tried to help people understand the seriousness of not just the thinking, for example, critical thinking, which is certainly important, but also thinking which is going to make the world a better place, is problem solving, is looking for solutions. And as we put all that together, it was very much appropriate from, let's say, 1980 to 1990, 95, our first books came out, everything. And what I think has amazed us is that every time the time changes, the habits remain fully important to people. So today, they're having a life that was as popular and as important as it was when we first started describing them. What we've gotten better at doing is knowing the impact of it. We've gotten a lot better at understanding how to think strategically so that when you are trying to build a habit, you have a repertoire of strategies that help you. We've certainly learned from the field research, people in the field who are doing, as practitioners, doing an incredible amount of research and looking into how to measure, how to think about this. So all of the things that you would help or hope you would learn over many, many years, we've really been learning that. What's beautiful is we learn it alongside practitioners. We've really stayed closely in touch with networks of teachers and people who are working in the field. So I think our ultimate hope is that we're always staying close enough to the learning practitioners and community that these habits become a part of just who we all become.
Wonderful. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, going right along with that, I think that as the habits of mind become infused in any school or organization, we begin to find that it's not just kid stuff. We're also talking about the adults in the school, and they begin to learn and use the habits of mind as well. And what happens then over time, not immediately, but over time, the whole culture of the school community changes. And that's because the community has adopted a common language. They begin to talk with each other about what it means to manage their impulsivity. They begin to talk freely and more openly about their own vulnerability, their own failures, their own successes. They begin to work together as a team, so they collaborate and think interdependently more. And so the habits of mind are like the yeast in bread, and it spreads throughout the organization, and it all rises together as a result. And so what we've seen and what happens to communities and I want to say not just the school, but also the parent community as well, that they all join in together and it forms a cohesiveness and a collaborative environment and a common language and a common set of values that other schools just don't have, but the Habits of Mind was the nucleus around which that happened.
Yeah, that's it's so wonderful to hear that, and I've seen it as well in schools that bring these habits of mind in, and I think yeah, we're realizing more and more, I think, just how important these things are. Yeah, well, academics and other things are important as well, but when you have kind of this toolbox that you can bring with you through life and pull out what you need at the time, it makes such a difference for children, young and old, and for adults. So yeah, really, really interesting. So just before we finish today, is there any last thing you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, listening to what Art just said reminded me that maybe they would like to know that we just finished a new book.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things we learned is we've learned how to write books, that's for sure. And it will be available on our website as an ebook, because that's really the way of the world today. And it's on the leadership question, which is really saying that if you really want to see your school culture really get influenced by the habits of mind, then leadership matters. And so we call it leading a learning organization with habits of mind. And because we've seen how many businesses and corporations are interested in the habits of mind and using them, we've put we've threaded a very strong way of looking at how this applies not only to you as a group of parents, to the teachers as a group of teachers, but to the employees of the bank, to the people who are working with technology. So it's really kind of trying to help business and education have a conversation with the common understanding of the significance of using habits of mind.
I love that.
I also think our other book on nurturing habits of mind in the early childhood classroom would be of great importance to you and all of your constituents. Yeah. And what's unique about that book is that it's really a collection of articles by practitioners from around the world. So we have articles in there, or chapters in there, I should say, from Mexico and New Zealand and Australia. And so it's a worldly view of the use of the habits of mind for little children. And there are some very practical suggestions for how to get started and how to teach the habits of mind, as well as providing leadership for creating that culture that we talked about. So that book is available from ASCD, and I would encourage your listeners to take advantage of that. I also would like to invite everybody to use our website, which we have many, many resources. If anybody would like to receive a newsletter, if you would send us your email if you want to, and our newsletter comes out on occasion, not necessarily regularly, but we like to bring updates and have people know what's happening around the world. And there are a lot of other schools around the world using the habits of mind, and so it would be joining an international community, and so that would be another. Bena, you might want to also talk about the learning path.
Oh, so was there anything else we wanted to tell you? We want to tell you about all the things we've been doing.
Why not?
But anyway, what we also are partnering with EduPlanet 21, and we've done online learning. So Art and I have done a series of online learning around habits of mind. It's very, very inexpensive. So if you were interested in just knowing more and hearing it from us, we've designed it in a very interactive and interesting way to kind of get you familiar with it. And we have 4 paths. So the first one is an introduction. How do you get started with kids, and how do you get started yourself? The second one is really how do you embed it in the curriculum? How do you make it more actively involved in the curriculum? And then the third is really thinking about how you make this a journey of continuous learning so that it's not just an event, but it actually has a real sense of continuity. And then the fourth is how you assess, how you reflect upon that, and what you learn from it. So those are our learning paths, and probably while we're still blabbing about what we're doing, we work with Terry Thorne, who was the producer of Rugrats. So for those people who grow up on Rugrats or The Simpsons, he was the producer. And we met him, and he really fell in love with the habits of mind. And he has done an animation for each habit. A little
wonderful
cartoon for each habit. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And all of that's on our website. So if you're interested in that, but we just continue to, I guess it's just a sign of our growth that we continue to find multimedia ways of bringing what we've learned and what people are learning in the field.
Yeah, it's amazing. So definitely we'll put the links to all the things that you mentioned so that it's easy to find, and to both of those books, because both of them sound like they'd be really useful for school leaders or for teachers and parents. But thank you for coming on and for sharing all that, what you obviously have a real passion for this, and it's amazing that it's spread all over the world and children everywhere are benefiting from this. Like I mentioned, I've been following you for many years myself, and the work that you're doing. So encourage everyone to check out the Habits of Mind Institute, or the Institute for Habits of Mind, and to learn more. It's really a great opportunity and something that can impact ourselves and the children that we work with. So thank you so much, Dr. Arthur Costa and Dr. Bena Kallick, for coming on and sharing with us today.
Hope you have a wonderful summit. Thank you for bringing us here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.